Liberty in America is under assault. We no longer live in a reality that includes property rights. We're no longer the kings of our own castle. We no longer enjoy the true benefits of capitalism. Instead, we're negotiating our rights with our own government. This isn't how our country was founded. These aren't the ideas of our founders. It's time to seize back our country. This is the Liberty Hour, where these important issues will be discussed for the sake of America's future. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Constitution in the other, here's your host, Sean Thompson.
This is the Liberty Hour podcast. Each and every Tuesday, Wednesday, 9:05, even when I barely get here, even when Justin shows me how to share on my Facebook instead of the Sean from Elmwood Park Facebook. All kinds of chaos going on. And more importantly, I had a lot of stuff going on this morning. I didn't get to listen to the morning show that much. But I did walk in under the crucial discussion of more socialist, collectivist, Fabian ideas. These aren't even Fabian. These are Trotskyites. These are Trotskyites in the city of Chicago. Fabian, they passed up. That's in the right lane, Fabian. This is the fast lane to totalitarian takeover of your life. Now, open and notorious, where they tell you how to run your business. They tell you how to pay your employees. Now they're going to tell you how to charge your tenants. Unless, of course, Justin, your tenant is a result and a ramification of the new drug laws, then the state will pay you per mattress. Did you know about this? Oh, it's the biggest thing in real estate right now. All the guys are trying to get cut in on it. It's almost fascinating to me. So, here's how it works. If you have, say, a 3-bedroom, 3-flat, and you have 3 units and they're all 3 bedrooms, you can turn that building into a rehabilitation for drug addicts and for various types of miscreants in our society, and the state will pay you per mattress per week. So instead of renting it to a family the old-fashioned way, and instead of billing it based on the value of the property, the benefits of the property, the area of the property, the way in which real estate has been priced for decades, now you can spread the ghetto through the countryside, and you're paid very well to do it, as opposed to what's the new agenda of the Chicago Mafia Democrat, rent control, because they care about you. They care about you, the little guy. They're going to make it so that you are treated just as you would have had you lived your life successfully and made good decisions and made something out of yourself. In fact, that's the new arbitrator of what justice is, are these corrupt bagmen we call politicians. But yesterday, in the city of Chicago, it was a big upset. It really was. I had picked the laughable fraud, Bill Daley. And I picked as a close second the not-so-laughable fraud, but fraud nonetheless, Gary Chico. And look at this. I'm dead wrong. So I want to say, Justin, to you and to the fans of the Liberty Hour, I firmly throw my support behind the obvious lesbian in a man suit. And I hope they go all the way to the finish line to win the mayor's race of Chicago. What's that? Oh, you're confused as to which one. All right, let me clarify it. I throw my support behind the obvious lesbian in a man's suit who we don't have to adjust either the chair behind the midget's desk or the urinal in the men's room of the mayor's office. So I am fully behind Little Thunderbolt. I think it's great. She should win. I mean Lightfoot. I think that only through this kind of lesser of two evils, because she is not in the pocket of the Chicago Teachers Union and other various labor extortionist crime wannabe unions, that's what they are. So it's crucially important we recognize what it means when a politician is paid off by a union. I think that's a very good topic to dive into. And ironically, it covers the foundation and the blueprint of all political corruption, because nothing exploits it better than a labor extortion racket known as a union. If you care to participate in the show, it's 312-642-5600. Now, I have all of Dan Proft's clips, and even though I didn't listen to the show, I do want to hit him and see what's up there, because I have nicknamed Grady Preckwinkle Grady, not just because I was a Sanford and Son fan, because I am big, still watch it on the old Wii TV, but because it's preposterous to me that this clear reciprocal of political corruption not only was elected to the Cook County Commissioners, as if that wasn't bad enough, where she promptly abused her authority. Remember when she tried the sugar tax on all of us? For the kids. But what is the consequence of that failure of the Cook County, which is arguably the worst county in America to live in? It's clearly in the bottom 5 of counties in America to live in. So you took this obvious failure, obvious receptacle of union payoffs, and you gave her the opportunity to run what is for now the 3rd largest city in the country. I think that is dwindling. I'd like them to redo that stat, if at all possible, after the effects of both J.B. Jelly Belly Pritzker's governorship and the new mayor, whoever that's going to be, whichever one of the lesser of two evils it's going to be. But there are but small nuances to what they are, little tiny differences. But there are differences none the same. And I do think that we would be better off, the people who are forced to live next to, like I am, the city of Chicago, if Lightfoot gets in. Only because Preckwinkle's open, admitted payoff favoritism to unions.
Because I remember when progressive wasn't a positive. It was at best a euphemism for unelectable. Those of us who proudly claimed it had to fight to transform the political landscape to make it clear that the people's values are progressive values.
Oh, geez. And by progressive, she means regressive.
When I say I will fight for working families, you know I will. Because I've done it.
She did a great job in Cook County where they're fleeing like the cow kicked the lantern over.
I've built affordable housing.
Oh, how'd that work out?
Expanded access to health care.
Is it going good?
Invested in workforce development.
Ooh, workforce development.
And raised the minimum wage.
And the consequence of all of those things you tout as a success is that sewer you call Cook County and that sewer you call Illinois, Chicago. There you go. Cook County is the state in which the statistics of the amount of people fleeing it on a monthly basis prevent international companies from even entertaining the idea of having a presence in Cook County. And this buffoon is now the one of the two that will be running Chicago. But one of the two what? One of the two, as she touts, progressives. Now, is that just something you get to say as a virtue shield? And the questions about the results of your tenure as a politician are somehow alleviated? There's no questions? We don't question the fact that you are directly the president of a county in which businesses run from, property values decrease, tax costs increase, and chaos runs rampant. Chaos. Cook County, where I live and have always lived while I'm in Illinois, is a county that the quality of the citizen's life over the last 20 years in particular, but let's say the last 10, have imploded. The schools that they somehow champion as an option for kids to do better, when they take their eye off the ball. And what is the school system of Chicago but an example of complete and total corrupt failure? Corrupt failure. And I don't just mean the upper echelon that has a revolving door to prison, because they do. I know we forget about the woman who went to prison for stealing and directing $25 million, because she only her payoff was $2.5 million. So not only are they corrupt and they're jokes, they're terrible negotiators. You stole $25 million and you only pocketed $2.5 million. You can't even do that right, stupid. And this woman was neck deep in it. This 6 foot woman. Okay, I guess we'll go with that. She was neck deep in it. And see, progressive somehow isn't really a value structure because the target's always missing as to what the values of progressivism is. Progressivism is casting yourself into servitude to the failures we call politicians. That's what they mean when they say progressive. Progressive has nothing to do with your ideology. For instance, some of the most conservative people, me in my life, conservative people, I love family members, I have friends who are homosexual. I could care less. I don't judge them because they like the same sex with someone of the same gender. That to me isn't an attribute to judge somebody. That doesn't qualify somebody for anything. To now allow political correctness to be somehow the scepter of socialism referred to as progressivism is how we are in this position, is how we are losing the ideological civil war. And no city in the country, not even California in my mind, maybe New York, but they're 1 and 2 with Chicago. These are the bastions, these are the representations, these are the destination of where the corrupt, Democrat, progressive, self-described progressive, this is where it leads. And instead of saying, I believe in rent control, and it is a wonderful example of how success and neighborhoods are turned around, they simply chant stripping the rights of property owners in a dictation of what the rules are when they are in control of it. Because the reality is, you are never in control of your property in Chicago, Illinois. Never. Now, there were some big wins, and that is that Coco Joe Moreno lost. His opponent won. But why do I say you're never in ownership of your property in Chicago, Illinois? Because of the layers of corruption from aldermen to state reps, to all of it that you have to bend knee to. And a guy like Coco Joe Moreno, as most of you, if you listen to this show, you're astute. You remember what he did with the double door. You remember how he knuckled under the tenants so that the owner could sell it to his campaign contributor / developer friend. That's commonplace in Chicago, Illinois. It's been commonplace for 30 years. So last night, ironically, there were some major victories, even though they will be hampered by the philosophy of the communist, because that's all we had to choose from, the 14 communists. But there were some major victories, and I love it that Daley lost. I love it that the capitalists, the Republicans who decided to help him win, they lost their money. I love it. Ricketts, scumbag. Good thing you lost your money. Griffin, who you're supposedly the guy who Republican PACs go after, who you get to pick and choose which Republican candidates will be accepted by the Republican Party because you control the purse strings. You let us all down when you backed the obviously most corrupt Bill Daley. So kudos to the citizens of Chicago who didn't allow the atrocity of a legacy corrupt scumbag like Bill Daley to win, or his number 2 choice, Garcia, or what was his name? Chico. Let's hear him.
This campaign has been one of the greatest experiences of my life, and it's all because of you. See, the eyes are going.
Gary Chico.
I don't have the words to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for every hour you volunteered, every call you've made, every door you've knocked, and every last dollar you've contributed.
See, that's the big thing. I wanted to point to him because the rumor was that Daley was too tainted, but this was going to be the guy that was able to sneak in and yet carry forward the legacy of pay-to-play schemes that have destroyed not just Chicago, but Illinois. So this was my fear. This is why I spent the day yesterday really showing you who this fraud was. So the good news is he lost. The bad news is it doesn't really adjust much because now that corruption is bolstered up by the fact Burke won, a man under indictment, a man that is truly the punchlines of night shows and comedians worldwide. He wins easily in a district that has a changing ethnicity that ran two people. I think the district is something like 60 or 70% Latino, and they ran two Latino candidates, and they lost miserably. And the guy under federal indictment, the guy who is clearly the acorn in which this roots, these forest of corruption in Chicago stems from, he wins. So what happens here? I'm old enough to remember when Harold Washington won. I'm old enough to remember the opposition by the Democrats, the roadblocks they put up, the way in which they blocked. And listen, don't get me wrong. I'm not too much of a Harold Washington fan, but he reminds me, not just because he wore women's underwear, of the two guys in men's suits running now. He reminds me of that. That was when the people of Chicago, in particular the minorities, realized we got to change something, man. It's too corrupt. And all they did is figure out how to corrupt that mayor himself by stifling his agenda to fix things. And that's what happens in the city of Chicago. That's why we need outside help to come in. That's why we need a complete restructuring, because the blueprints of legacy, contract negotiations, union control, that corruption, it almost doesn't matter who you put in the position of mayor. It's because it's an army layer deep. It's a foot soldier layer deep. So it is crucially important that if you want to put up any opposition, you have to have Lightfoot win. You absolutely have to have Lightfoot win. But we can take some gratefulness in the fact that you're starting to see aldermen be rejected for their arrogance, for their stupidity, for their corruption. You're starting to see a turn. I didn't think Moreno would lose. Now, I don't know too much about his opponent, but the good news is at least Moreno lost.
As long as I'm around, and I bet the next alderman ever, nothing's going to happen.
Wait, this is an example of why he should have lost. This is when he shakes down the double door tenant.
As long as I'm around, and I bet the next alderman ever, nothing is going to happen in this building. Okay? So you're at, and by the way, when the leases are up there, since they're down zoning, you can't sign new leases for your tenants. So whenever those leases are up and those guys want to leave, and you want to sign a new lease with a new tenant, you're not going to be able to. I'm being upfront with you. I'm being honest with you. So it's going to be an empty building with no income for you or your family. End of conversation.
Now, see, that is not just the example of a gangster. That's the naked example of what rent control is. That's a politician taking over the ownership of a building. He knuckles under both the tenant and the owner, and so that the property could be sold to his developer. And it went through without a hiccup. And what was the ramifications? A big, fat bribe in the name of a contribution to Moreno. It's absolutely disgusting and despicable that this guy wasn't immediately investigated by the FBI, wasn't immediately investigated by the Illinois state authorities of some kind. But that's the kind of clout Chicago is. That's why you have to kiss the ring of Dick Mell. That's why you have to support Lightfoot in this race. Because Dick Mell, Ed Burke, Mike Madigan, their pick is Grady Preckwinkle. That's the pick. The pick. Oh, boy, I almost slipped there. How's that for a Freudian slip? But more of Moreno.
I can't stop the rumors. There are all kinds of rumors, especially these days. But I can tell you the truth, and I think that's what you want from me.
That's when he was caught giving the hooker his car, then reported the car stolen. This is the other thing. See, we're all just playthings. The Chicago Police Department, the landlords of the people in his district, the businesses that occupy. You're just playthings for these corrupt, because what they realize is you have nowhere to turn. This is how mafias are built. When you have nowhere to go because they control, you're landlocked. So Moreno, want to hear one more? Let's hear one more of this guy. I can't get enough of it. And by the way, I am hoping that there is somehow a benefit where we could have some sort of a radio talk show host versus ex-politician, like an MMA thing. I would put up the money myself. Here he is.
Again, it was miscommunication. A person that I dated and is a friend of mine.
Yeah, and she used to date the three guys that had $200 before you then the same night.
Yeah, because there's a misunderstanding that she had it for longer than she wanted to, and I was having a hard time getting a hold of her. So that's the only reason that I needed to.
So I needed to report the car stolen. I mean, it's just sickening how they get away with it. The race was scary to me. I watched 14 different versions. of bad ideas, bad principles. Ironically, the one that won the majority is somehow maybe a way to expose just how deep the layers of corruption are. And I was also worried about Susan Mendoza. I thought that Susan Mendoza could pull it out because she could capture the ethnic and the female vote. And I was concerned that not enough people knew the legacy of interwoven clout and corruption Susan Mendoza poses. Susan Mendoza, aside from just telling you what a great soccer player she is, has been interwoven with Burke for 20 years. 20 years. She used to wear her hair down when she met Burke. Now she's got it pulled back like Frau Bruhair. Susan Mendoza would have been a rubber stamp. She would have been Jane Byrne. And the one thing people that maybe not remember about Jane Byrne, she was a liaison to the corruption. She benefited from it. Her inner circle really exploded into the providers of contracts. All of the daily pay-to-play contractors and agreements with the city of Chicago and suppliers of goods really, really raked it in under Jane Byrne because she did exactly what she was told. And I was afraid Susan Mendoza would, but thankfully she didn't. And she did something that was almost magnanimous. During the debate, she supported Lightfoot. Let's see what she has to say after last night.
Like, it's been 20 years since I lost a race.
There you go.
It's
she
not
partnered
fun.
up with Burke.
It stings.
Last time.
Yeah, last time. Thank you. The truth is, no matter how much it stings, people in this city face far worse things every single day than losing an election. The people of this city pick themselves up every day. They don't quit, and neither will I.
I don't want to hear the rest of it. The people of this city do another thing. The people of this city learn to deal and cope with what we all know is happening here. The people of the city learn to deal and cope with the political corruption that is just undeniable. Undeniable. Because the people who they would normally turn to have been corrupted as well. But this is what progressivism/socialism is. It is corrupted by nature. And they position themselves to give you this lesser of two bad choices who pretty much share ultimately the same ideas. And that is exemplified by the fact that all 14 of them are going to legalize marijuana, which, listen, as you know, if you listen to the show, I tend to be a libertarian, right? So to me, you can't stop people from destroying their lives. You can only tell them not to. You can only show them an example of how not to. But ultimately, it's a human condition where people are going to, certain people out there are always going to be susceptible to do things you tell them not to do. And history has been very clear. You can go to before Christ and realize that this is just a part of society. Now, what you do when you pretend to make things illegal is you build an area of society called the black market, which attracts some of the most dangerous people around us, right? So now what the city is realizing, and other states, and what they and this is not just the agenda of Chicago, it's also Jelly Belly Pritzker. What they see is they just want to be cut in on the action. But they're doing it in a methodical way as to keep the black market intact and benefit only their black market, only their payoff, their lobbyists, their contributors, which is why the way in which they're legalizing marijuana isn't really legalizing it. It's controlling the distribution to people who have paid them off. I mean, we could call them lobbyists. We could call them campaign contributors. But it's really about paying off your inner circle, your foot soldier of corruption, which is why they don't open it up to just any store can sell it. They want to control it so that it's being monetized and directed to where they're getting the kickback. And that's why you've had the medical marijuana dispensaries all owned by connected lobbyists or relatives of politicians. So they can't even deal drugs in an honest fashion. It's the same way in which we have the ghetto gaming, controlled primarily by one guy. And it's why all the politicians who were able to get to the finish line all support gaming and drugs. Because really, what they've understood is they underestimated the amount of money in drugs, the amount of money in gaming. And all the government of Chicago wants is to be cut in on it, but they want to protect it as well. Because do you not think those who deal in the black market are keeping aldermen fat in the city of Chicago, keeping mayors fat in the town, state representatives? Of course they are. Not stupid. And you've got a point in history right now where they're telling you, look, it's undeniable. It has defeated us. The black market is alive and well. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it safer. And once again, government sells you the one thing it can never possess but always claims to: safety. Safety. Everything will be rosy as long as my cousin or my lobbyist or the guy who's been my biggest contributor gets to open up a medical dispensary or now a marijuana dispensary. So only government. It would be funny if it wasn't so sad. Only government could screw up drug dealing. And they're going to do it, and the beat will go on, and it'll be more dangerous for us. The statistics are quite clear. Because the last thing government wants to do is take its hands around your neck off. It's never going to do that. It's going to move their fingers around. That's what they do. And we're losing the ideological war when you step back from Illinois and you see and you watch the agenda of the socialists who call themselves Democrats. You see it as the green energy or new Green Deal. You see it as the people who are prominent in what used to be a political party are now preaching government control life. Cradle to grave, government control life. And how the inquisition that should be given in questioning a philosophy of really terror, a philosophy of slavery known as socialism, it's instead of it being dismantled and questioned, it's being bolstered up by the media. And I laughed as Jorge, the guy from Telemundo who hated Donald Trump during the questioning, he went to Venezuela and he showed Maduro tapes. Showed Maduro tapes of people eating out of garbage. And you know what Maduro did? He locked them up. Locked them up for 32 hours till he changed his mind. And I love it when socialists get to understand exactly the kind of force, the kind of power, the kind of terror over individuality socialism is. It's just, I don't want to see that happen in this country. But it's going to happen if you are really deciding that the two candidates that will be the president or the presidential nominee by the Democrat Party are this dimwit.
Okay, so many sweet potato cubes.
There she is. Yeah, that's Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah, everyone, I'm making chili.
Yeah. Okay.
Someone said, please explain the Green New Deal. Thank you for asking.
Huh? What?
So the whole premise of the Green New Deal is that we're screwed on climate. I'm sorry to break it to you. If we do nothing, there is no hope. Period. That's just a principle across the board. If we do not act, there is no hope. The only time we can hope is when we act. But when it comes to climate in particular, we're actually screwed. There is a global threat to the planet. A global threat.
What good's the money?
And at this point, we don't even have to prove it. Just walk outside in winter in a lot of places, and it's either way worse than you're used to or way warmer than you're used to. Hurricanes, storms, wildfires. We are dying now.
You know the greatest thing about being a politician? You just say shit. You just get to say it. Just say it, stream words together. It doesn't matter that you're basically incoherent and illiterate. Just stream words together, make people afraid, and tell them all they need to do is surrender their life to you. It's incredible that it's the year 2018. I remember I'm a kid that was a kid in the late 60s, early 70s. We were supposed to be the Jetsons. Flying around, technology, everything was going to be great. Look at you. You drive a Tesla, the thing bursts into flames like it was a match. And this dimwit, this is the girl who's got the answers because in her 29-year sheltered, spoiled little rich girl life, the winters are worse, the summers are worse. She doesn't even want to use the data they have because each and every day the data they have is proven incorrect. Los Angeles, greatest article yesterday. In 60 years, about the same time that the citizens who believe in global warming and climate change have been telling you won't be able to go outside with a spacesuit because the sun will melt you, have experienced the coldest winter in 60 years right now. Does that matter? There is an effect that can deter a tyrant. Not one throughout history. Whether it's Caesar, Hitler, or Ocasio-Cortez. And she is a tyrant. She has the knowledge that couldn't fill a thimble. Would you let her park your car? If I pull up to a valet and I see her there chewing her whatever it was she was eating, talking about how it's the end of the world, you're not driving the car, honey. Stand on the curb, dummy. I'll park it. Let alone, this is a lawmaker. A lawmaker. It is harder to be an insurance salesman. Just ask Bill Daley, who had to have somebody else take the test, than it is to be a lawmaker. It's astonishing. And this person who is unaware of fact, unaware of reality, living inside of a bubble inside her head, this bubble head is now going to be in the top 5 of possible nominees to be the president, if not now, somewhere in the future. This is the star. But what do you expect from a party who has another star, an 80-year-old walking ad for Depends?
I think it's also fair to point out that when we were in Moscow, for example, I think most of the people here...
Wait, you mean when you were in Moscow, during the Cold War, when you took that handsome devil you call a wife on a honeymoon? You mean then, stupid? Or now? This is a guy, you want to talk about Russian collusion. Where's all the curious Democrats? Is Russia a bigger threat when Vladimir Putin in 2016 was running the country, or when Khrushchev, Brezhnev was running the country, when this scumbag was going there when Americans weren't supposed to go there? I mean, next to Oswald, who went in and out of the Kremlin more than this fraud during the Cold War? And here he is, your walk-in Democrat nominee.
I think it's also fair to point out that when we were in Moscow, for example, I think most of the people here also were extremely impressed by their public transportation system. The stations themselves were absolutely beautiful, including many works of art, chandeliers that were beautiful.
It's called Potemkin, you frickin' idiot.
Also, I was impressed by the youth programs that they have, their palaces
like the Nazis.
For the young people, a whole variety of of programs for young people.
Get in line, Hans.
Cultural programs which go far beyond what we do in this country. We went to a theater in Yaroslavl, which was absolutely beautiful, had 3 separate stages where cultural programs are put on by professional actors and actresses, including a puppeteer area.
Oh, there was a puppeteer.
And of course, the highest price of the ticket that you can get was the equivalent of $1.50.
Well, okay. Take away my freedom and you had a puppeteer. Cost me $1. Forget about the fact that they killed 50 million people, you stupid idiot. Like, you know what? All you need is a good act. Give me a Potemkin village and take my freedom. And you know something? There's millions of morons shaking their head when this idiot talks. This is the civil war of our time. It isn't going to be about gray and blue. It's going to be about slavery versus freedom. And what's sickening is to see how many of your fellow Americans are willing to give their freedom to an idiot like this or an idiot like Ocasio-Cortez. I'll tell you one thing the Russians had over us. At least their dictators presented themselves as intelligent men, as opposed to you and this other idiot.
40 years, and we've never addressed it. In fact, the issue's gotten worse.
We've never addressed global warming, huh, stupid?
I think that working on an issue for 30 years alone is what qualifies, is what makes someone qualified to solve an issue.
Yeah, you don't need qualification standards.
There are a lot of people that have been doing this work for decades, that have proposed ambitious solutions for years and have not been listened to. So it's not just I've been doing this for 30 years, so we need to listen to them. Because frankly, people have been failing at the same things for 30 or 40 years. What we need to do is say, what solutions have not been...
Wait a minute. If she's concerned about people failing at the same things for 30 and 40 years, why does she think that socialism is the answer? Socialism has been failing for 1,000 years. Socialism is the prime example of failure. You could leave corruption on the side because she doesn't want to admit that there is corruption in it. Socialism is what's imploding Venezuela as we speak. Socialism is the kind of philosophy that leads to certain theocracies throughout the world. Socialism has never brought the utopia of the salesman. All of a sudden, she's interested in fact. It's astonishing to me that Democrats aren't putting up this argument. The Democrat Party, I grew up in a house with Democrats. I grew up among them. They were not these Soviets. What transpired? What happened? And you know what the answer is. Schools. Schools that Grady Preckwinkle, that Lightfoot, that every one of the 14 frauds that ran for Chicago mayor. Schools that they just want to give endless and endless money regardless of results. So you want to know what the real point is? It's time for the conservatives to end public schools. It is immoral. On the fundamental basis of property rights, it is immoral to take from those to educate someone else's kids. Immoral. I'm astonished it ever was passed. We have learned, we have forgotten, we can't understand what Americanism is anymore. You talk to even a conservative who wants to turn over the power of trade to five morons in Washington. Sorry, but it is. We, as Americans, forgot what it's like to be free. We're afraid. We're like scared dogs. We're like scared dogs, waiting for our master to feed us. When the reality is, where are the lawyers? Where is the venue? How could I possibly even defend myself against a guy like Pritzker, who now tells me if I have a business, what to pay my people? How did we come this far downstream? Because it empties into absolute and total communism. Democrat philosophies is communism at a slow speed. That's all it is. It's a school zone for communism. But make no mistake, try to get off the road. It has no turnoffs. There are no turnoffs in the philosophy of Ocasio-Cortez, of Bernie Sanders, of Preckwinkle, of Lightfoot, of Mendoza, of Chico. There are no turnoffs. There's just the same destination, and you're going to get there at different speeds. And Illinois is what sends the shiver down my spine, because where is the rebuttal? Where is the alternative? As we heard, I listened, obviously I got to studio. I was listening to Dan Proft, have the expert on rent control, and he asked a very pointed question, who's putting up an opposite? Well, Durkin said something. What? I don't need you to say something. I need you to put together a legal team to sue. Have a guy who's a small businessman I'll do it, who doesn't want to be terrorized by J.B. Pritzker, file a damn lawsuit. Take it to the court. Now, I know we're going to have to wake up that Betty Ford wannabe Dick Mell's, or not Dick Mell, Ed Burke's wife, who sits on the Supreme Court, have her get her feet down and make a decision, but at least put up a resistance. This is the one takeaway that you have to get from the Democrats. At least resist the way they do. As you look at this carnival in Washington, D.C., and it's a carnival, don't you almost admire the way that they fight? Don't you almost admire the resistance to the counter idea of their beliefs that they put up? What did we do? What did we do when George Bush was in, when he spent us to oblivion, when he used law to seize individual rights? What did we do? We were told to skid in line and step and fetch, like the good little servant you are. The problem is there's nowhere else to run. You got to put up the fight now. You got to go down swinging. And you do it with your mouth. You do it by not accepting it. You do it by being around these people, going to where they are, and calling them what they are. Frauds. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about an ideological stronghold where we go back to those very principles we pretend we admired. we tell our kids about. We stand up during the national anthem. All of this poppycock about who kneels, who doesn't. Forget about that. Who understands the words? Who understands the premise? Who understands the philosophy of what the national anthem represents and what they were fighting for and what they were fighting against? Saddest part of all is to look in the mirror and realize you're not half the men you think you are. You're not half the principled, fundamental people you claim to be. When you listen to talk radio, when you listen to podcasts, you're not. Or you'd at least stand up against it. It's not a popular road. I'll tell you right now, I got friends, family, everything. And they give me the brow. What are you doing over there? Look at you. Listen, I love you too. I love you. I loved you when we were kids. But you sold out. You gave the envelope to the mayor. You became a fireman. You sat on your ass for 20 years. Now you tell me you got to take off my table to give on yours. Sorry, it's a scam, brother. That's the kind of admission we need. The kind of idea where we stop calling the problems of Illinois a pension problem. There's no such thing as a pension problem when you have an agreement like this. This is a Ponzi scheme problem. And what you have are too few people in the scheme. So you got to come and you got to pretend it's for the kids. You got to pretend it's for the elderly. You got to pretend it's for the sick. And you got to take our shit. You got to figure out ways to seize our money to pay off your foot soldier con men. Because the other unspoken truth is, how does a guy like Burke win? How does the guy who was running against the I can't remember their name, the handpicked Madigan's alderman for 20 years beat the kid from Fenwick who went to DePaul, who was an honest young kid, wanted to represent the people? The guy got 85% of the votes. Burke, under indictment, gets over 50% of the votes. How do you do it? Because you successfully corrupted society. And that's why you leave Chicago. And that's why you leave Illinois. Not just because people are in office who have a disagreement. No. Because your neighbor is in on the scam. So there's only two kinds of people that stay. The ones that are too stupid to see it and the ones that are in on it. And that's what happens in the Soviet Union. Don't worry. It lasted 72 years. How much longer can Illinois last? When you look at the numbers right now, it's financially bankrupt. So it's uncomfortable. It's hard. But you have to put up a resistance. You have to put up a fight. You have to espouse and believe in liberty. You have to stay fast to the beliefs, even though it's tempting. Even though health care, with the Medicare expansion, you get a free health club membership. Ooh, there you go. So take away my neighbor's property because I get a free membership. You have to show at least some character of what it means to be an American. And it doesn't mean you put on a hat and you chant. It means you think. It means you stand up. It means you recognize what liberty is, what freedom is. It's scary. There are no certainties, but there is a dignity in it. There is a fact you can sit there and you say, can't have it. Sorry you got a bad deal. I'm sorry you bought the scam, but you can't come after me. I didn't have anything to do with it. Otherwise, you know what you become? An Illinoisan. It's a sad state of affairs when you look to the third largest city, once a great city, and you look at these two freaks that are going to take it over, these two socialists. Which one you want? Well, I guess if you're going to make me pick, I'll take the non-union sponsored freak. But that's only for now. Once she wins, the unions will be in there. The crime families, the guys with the stretch marks on their earlobes pretending to be tough. Unions. I can't decide which one I want to get my hands on more. The Union BA or Coco Joe Moreno. I sure hope they wander into the Elmhurst Cigar House before I sell it. And it's for sale. And if you want to move to South Florida, it's called Liberty Real Estate Services. In the meantime, we'll be back Sunday night, 8 to 9. And by the way, I was asked to fill in for Joe Walsh on 5. I have to tone it down a little bit because, it's a nationally syndicated show. I can't do the swearing, and I don't get so angry. But I will tell you on Friday why it is outrageous that this scumbag, Michael Cohen, is given any kind of credibility. But we are in a system that doesn't punish liars and cheats and frauds. In fact, what we do is make them congressmen and senators. This is the Liberty Hour. We'll be back Sunday night. I'll be on Joe Walsh, 5 to 7 Chicago time, 5 to 8 nationally syndicated.